Yeah, I think it feels that way. I've been here before. I think when you are so abrupt, blunt about it, then there seems to be no way back, really. And I think he is probably now at a point where he's accepting that, it feels like to me.
Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe and this is Inside United. I'm joined, as always, by Laurie Whitwell from The Athletic. But Laurie, you're not in the studio. Talk me through where you are.
I am in the National Stadium of Kuala Lumpur. And there's a lot of loud music going on to really rev up the crowd outside, which is why I'm doing the kind of DJ thing by pressing my earphones to my face so that I can hear you more than the David Guetta song maybe that's in the background. And yeah, I feel a bit rude having my sunglasses on, so maybe I'll take these off. Is that better? I just wanted to start with the sunglasses just to sort of, show that I'm somewhere very hot. Don't know if you can tell that by my red face. But it's crazy. I mean, there's so many people here, massive queues outside, red shirts as far as the eye can see, so many food stalls. It's a bit different than the burger van outside Old Trafford. There's all kinds of incredible smelling cuisine outside. So, yeah, it's been brilliant to walk through the crowd to get here.
It looks fantastic. You can tell there's just a slight sort of shimmer on the forehead, which suggests to me a humid environment, but you're looking very good. And it's got that kind of dewy glow that a lot of people are going for these days. So I think you're looking fantastic. There's loads to get through today, though, of course. We'll mention a little bit about where you are in the pre-season tour or post-season tour, which is new to me. We'll also be talking about transfers, of course, the latest on Cunha, Delap, links with Bryan Mbeumo as well, and potentially this clearing out of the squad that seems to be underway at Manchester United. But before all that, you did your kind of, what's become almost tradition at this point, your kind of post-season piece. We alluded to it last week, talking about all sorts of things about the season that's just gone by, what happened with the new formation, down to power dynamics. We're going to go through all of this stuff, even including body language consultants. There's a lot to get into. But first of all, how long were you putting that together for? How long did it take to bring this sort of mega piece together?
Well, I just hope that how excited you got on the last podcast about this piece was your appetite was sated. Joe, hopefully. It's something I didn't intend to do this when I first started covering United at The Athletic. It just sort of felt like there was stuff happening each season and, okay, let's do an end of season piece. And it's probably got into a mode now for me where, as soon as the season starts, just if I hear a little bit that's not in its own way interesting for a news story, just keep it, behind. So it's just constant conversation with people over several months, really. The actual writing of it was probably, a few weeks, to be honest, like maybe 2 or 3. As my editor knows, I'm quite a slow writer. Careful, I like to say, putting things together, making sure you check things thoroughly as much as I can do, having that sort of backwards and forwards sometimes, because people will have a different version of what's gone on, and you kind of have to ask around again, find more sources, make sure that it's absolutely accurate. So, yeah, it takes a long time putting together, then write, and then perhaps, rephrasing certain bits in case you find out that it wasn't quite the case as you believe. So, hopefully it did the job of kind of revealing a little bit more about the club than we had previously.
Well, there's loads to get into with that. So I'll start sort of nearer the beginning of that article. There was you mentioned about some of it was just kind of the way that the club is speaking about the manager, the way that the club is engaging with the manager at this stage. You mentioned the difference between when Jim Ratcliffe was asked to speak about Erik ten Hag, and I've got the quote here, said, "I think he's a very good coach, but at the end of the day, it's not my call," which again isn't particularly sort of warm and reassuring in terms of his job. Obviously, he ended up leaving. He's been a lot warmer about Ruben Amorim. Just as a sort of overall picture, as things stand, despite last season, are the club still convinced of Erik ten Hag? Bloody hell, I hope not. Of Ruben Amorim, and is he safe as far as you see it?
Yeah, I certainly think that's the case, because it's different, right? I mean, Erik ten Hag wasn't their guy, so there was always that suspicion that he would ultimately depart. They obviously even went further than that and were looking around. It felt a doomed relationship, really, at that point. And so this is a different scenario because they've appointed him. So you've particularly got Omar Barada, the chief executive, who was, I think, entailed to it. He went to Lisbon to get the deal done. And you also have Sir Jim Ratcliffe appointing him. And he's what became apparent throughout this whole putting the piece together, and since he's been raised, is how involved he is in terms of different decisions. I'm not saying he's, at Carrington every day at all. I think he lost a lot of aspects of the club And so, yeah, he met Ruben Amorim before appointing him. He clearly knows that he needs this to work, because otherwise the fingers are going to be pointed at the hierarchy. And then you've also got Jason Wilcox as well, technical director, who's got a strong relationship with Ruben Amorim, from what I'm led to believe. And so that those people all working in unison want this to work. They want Ruben Amorim to be the guy that can turn the ship around. Obviously, the ship has sunk a little bit with him in charge, but I think that's a consequence of the system change, the signings, the general atmosphere, the focus on the Europa League. So as far as I'm aware, you look at the transfers already, they're making moves in the market to back him. I think they understand they need to support him properly for this to have any chance to succeed.
Yeah, you mentioned there about turning the ship around. There was specific relation and specific mention of a ship or a yacht, as the case may be, in your piece, talking about Jim Ratcliffe offering to host the squad, or certainly some of the senior members of the squad, on his yacht to watch the Euros final last year. That was a slightly odd kind of, I don't know whether out of touch is the right word, because it's a nice gesture, but I like how you wrote about when the players or people kind of decided it wasn't for them. It's like, right, I've rescinded the offer, I'm going somewhere else, I'm sailing away with my little offer in my back pocket. Do you think was it a throwing his toys out the pram situation, or do you think, fair enough, if you don't want to come out, I'll do something else anyway? It's felt a little bit like, well, I didn't fancy you anyway, I don't know what I don't care that you rejected me.
I mean, I don't think they rejected him, to be honest. I think it was, it felt like a bit of a negotiation over how long would they spend on the yacht, which I think everyone was going to go. It was in the schedule. It's just that maybe, I think his version of what it was going to be like, kind of a celebration, relaxing environment was different to what I think Eric Ten Hag had in mind, where it was a day before a game. Yeah, it's a friendly, but it's obviously, an important first step in pre-season. And, Eric Ten Hag is a disciplinarian. He wanted to be professional. And so there's a little difference of opinion, I suppose, as to what it was going to be. It's a limiting the time there as well. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, Sir Jim Ratcliffe has wealth beyond my comprehension, and he has a yacht that was moored off the coast of Norway. And when it didn't seem like it was going to be the kind of right thing that he wanted, okay, I'll go away then. But yeah, it's a fascinating angle to it all, because I think that's the kind of stuff that he's a billionaire, right? He's got so much sort of power and authority, particularly with Ineos as well, his company, that what he wants to happen, I think a lot of times that has happened. So when it doesn't, maybe that's an unusual experience for him.
Yeah, he's not used to that, I'm sure. There's all sorts in there. You mentioned before about him being a lot more hands-on. Carrington even hints that he was offering sort of stretching suggestions that he used before his marathons. I mean, to be fair, if you can stretch a 73-year-old to the point where he's running, 4.5-hour marathons, I mean, maybe we could have learned a little bit of something from it. Do you think that sort of thing, though, those kind of hands-on and is it... Because I think it's easy to paint it. On the one hand, you can say, what's he doing? He's overstepping his boundaries there. These lot know better than him about everything, so why is he even there? But on the other hand, one of the reasons I think the Glazers were so disliked and have been so unsuccessful as owners is because their disinterest in Manchester United has literally just turned us into basically a purse. If we can get a few million quid out of them, then fine, and if not, we'll let someone else run it. Do you think that? Do you think on the whole it's appreciated that Jim Ratcliffe cares and is in the building and is on the training ground occasionally, or do you think it's seen as a little bit of, nose over the shoulder kind of being a little bit too much?
I think everything's coloured by the fact that he's come in and is making a lot of people redundant. So you're looking at 450 people losing their jobs at the end of this process. So people are going to be massively upset with that. They're going to think that it's the wrong call. The way that they're going about it is very brutal, and there's certain touches, like I don't know if I mentioned this on the last podcast that we did, but the kind of physios, nutritionists, masseurs were told 48 hours after the Europa League final that they'd helped with that they'd be at risk of losing their jobs, particular individuals concerned. So there's that kind of timing aspect to it where, fine, they might have wanted to know ahead of the postseason tour, but it feels quite cruel to me. So that covers everything. And then I think, in this kind of scenario, I think people probably were a little bit surprised that he was probably making comments and asking for feedback on aspects of the club that I imagine they will feel that they've got very strong understanding of. Listen, I think you do want an owner that is caring about the club, but wants it to be successful. I suppose there's a point though it trips over into meddling, shall we say, and then that I think does become an issue.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, like you said, there's always a fine line, and if United win trophies, then we hit the line perfectly, and if United don't win trophies, then every action taken till that point will be scrutinised and will be vilified. And I think, as long as the manager feels as though he's getting the support he needs, then we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. There was another interesting thing I thought. Well, there's loads of interesting things. One thing, you said that Erik ten Hag and Jim Ratcliffe only had one face-to-face meeting in the 10 months that they worked together. That seems very... I mean, I know it's the owner and he's not the, on the training ground every day, but that feels a little bit of a sort of a bad omen. Do you think it was always in the pipeline for Erik ten Hag to leave?
Yeah, I mean, one proper meeting. They saw each other. They saw each other at the FA Cup final when there was that perhaps awkward handshake, and Ratcliffe was thinking, "Oh, I don't know if we can follow through on that, intention really to dismiss him at that point." But yeah, I think they came to Carrington, to Jim Ratcliffe, to Dave Brailsford, met Erik ten Hag. At the time, I remember ten Hag saying it was a very positive, productive meeting. Maybe in hindsight, he has to say that because put a positive spin on things, try and manifest a successful relationship. But I think it spoke volumes that he's not his guy. Whereas by contrast, you talk about the relationship that he's got with Ruben Amorim, Jim Ratcliffe, and he's spoken in interviews, hasn't he, where he's saying every time I go to Carrington, I have a word with Ruben. Sometimes I tell him where he's going wrong and he tells me to fuck off, basically. And I thought that was very interesting. But it does seem like he's got a more, there's more conversations taking place. And again, you don't need an owner and a manager to have weekly meetings, far from it. But I think in that situation with Erik ten Hag, that did speak volumes, really, that it was going to go a certain direction because they didn't have that bond.
No, it's a shame, innit? But again, we're here where we are now, and I feel like everyone's, at least for now, pulling in the same direction, which, we'll see how long that lasts if we win one of our first 9 games next season. But I think, building for the summer is a big one, and the fact that we're all seem to be on the same page is a good start. There's a few other bits I want to get to from this article as well, and then we will talk more about transfers and some potential outs as well. This thing of this 78-year-old sprint coach who... I just love this character. I feel like every year in your sort of post-season pieces, there's a character that emerges. I think a couple of years ago, after Rangnick was in, it was Chris Armas and this mysterious sort of coach out in Russia. There you go, who was on the end of a FaceTime audio call for every Manchester United game. I thought that was hilarious and bonkers and embarrassing in equal measure. Now we've got a couple. We've got this body language coach and we've got this 78-year-old American sprint coach who came in and told Mason Mount how to pump his arms faster. I love this. Tell me a little bit about this guy, what he was doing at United, and do you think it was seen as this sort of excess of money and a waste, or do you think it was seen as an actual valuable person to bring in?
I think it was a very interesting move, and I would endorse United thinking outside the box to try and get knowledge into the building in the right kind of way. And he is a world-renowned coach. He's coached Ashton Eaton to double Olympic gold, decathlon. He obviously knows absolutely everything about track and field, and mechanics was the main thing, really. And I was told that players generally had kind of we're asking the question of people close to them about their running techniques because being picked up. There was Ruben Amorim wanting a new approach with his that they were, perhaps having to adapt to. But yeah, the origins of this, and credit to Matt Lawton at the Times because he got an interview with Harry Marrow where he talked about it, were Lord Sebastian Coe, who's on the United Sports for Old Trafford. He obviously knows Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and Coe knew Marrow. So there was a conversation around it, and it kind of happened organically in that way. So again, it's kind of come from the top down rather than the coaches perhaps saying, I tell you what, we need to appoint here somebody with that kind of expertise that can maybe come in and help us. I actually saw him. So we did do the story when he first came to the club, and then I saw him the next day. It was an open training session at Carrington because it was a Europa League game, and he had the most brilliant tan. And I was like, wow, you have really given up your life in, I think, Santa Monica in California to come to Old Trafford, race guys at Carrington. And he looked very happy. He was pleasant, said a quick hello. And yeah, the Mason Mount story he told in this interview with Matt in the Times, where he gave him a bit of instruction, and from his point of view, it worked really well. Because there's always, the player would be like, well, I don't know how much it exactly, change my behaviours. Maybe if it's a small crumb of something, he goes along with it, then hopefully consistency has been back in now. But there's obviously multiple factors that go into a player getting injured and then recovering. So, but this was, I think, a really interesting aspect to it all, Joe. And I agree with you. It's things like this will keep happening though, because I think you've got so many different characters at United that are coming into the club, that are working in football for the first time, that are perhaps having these outside ideas to push it forward. I mean, there was a line in the piece about Harry Maguire, the cost of him coming in is about 80 grand. And at the same time that Ratcliffe was talking about, letting go of the former Players Association, that was 40 grand. So at a time when you're cutting costs, every payment is going to be scrutinised by people because they're thinking, well, if you're chopping the budget here, how have we got the finance for that? So, yeah, it's not a perfect science, I don't think.
No, and I was just about to mention the cost of it. It says Maris fees plus accommodation came to around £80,000, and some at the club wondered whether that kind of assistance could have been done at less expense at a time when Ratcliffe was, for instance, cutting the annual £40,000 given to the United Former Players Association. I don't want to get into whether that 80 grand is worth twice as much as that 40 grand was worth. I think that's a slightly reductive way for me to kind of... But what I do think is, if United are going to be spending money on anything, it should be making the players better. I think already, more coaches and more specialised coaching to improve every single part of the game. I know everyone's sick of seeing Arsenal's set-piece coach on the sidelines whenever they've got a corner. I think it's slightly cringy and egotistical. But you can't deny that they've become one of the best set-piece teams in the world. I think spending money on the details is what that money should be spent on. I'm not saying cut it from this X, Y, or Z specifically, but I think if Man United are spending money on coaches and improving mechanics and improving details, I can see why that there could be value in that personally. But obviously, if you've lost your job and you see, like you said, this American 78-year-old sprint coach come in, you think, I'm having to look for a new job and this guy's swanning in. I can see why that would be hugely frustrating. Let's move on a little bit then, because you also mentioned in your piece, and this is a sort of still an evolving story around Alejandro Garnacho. After the Europa League final, we saw these comments from him, we saw the comments from his brother, talking basically, airing their frustrations about not playing, or about Garnacho not playing more than 20 minutes in the Europa League final. As it stands right now, is his time at Manchester United done? Because there was this report, wasn't there, that came out. I'd like you to confirm or tell me what you've heard about this, about the phrasing even of what Amorim said, saying, kind of, you better pray to God that another club want to buy you. Is that your understanding of what happened, and is that an irreparable relationship, do you think?
Yeah, I think that is a fair representation of what happened. Obviously, it's my colleague David Ornstein for breaking the story originally, and then the Daily Mail for picking up that detail. I think it feels that way. I've been here before. I think when you are so abrupt, blunt about it, then there seems to be no way back, really. And I think he is probably now at a point where he's accepting that, it feels like to me. I think even in January, obviously there was talk around it, and I think that was perhaps a surprise to him. Well, not a surprise as such, but I don't think he was a willing exitee, shall we say. I think he kind of, his gut was he wanted to stay United and fight for his place. Now, obviously, the situation has moved on since that point to then this relationship feeling like it's at the end of its course. Clearly, Amorim was very irritated by what Garnacho said after the game in Bilbao. Garnacho himself was clearly responding to what Amorim had said in the press conference, where he mentioned the miss in the semi-final as a way of explaining why he picked Mason Mount in the game. And so that kind of tension, I think, then crystallised a feeling from Amorim, though, that goes wider than that about in style, because really, Garnacho's strength is as a winger, out wide, attacking defenders to take them on. If he doesn't succeed, going again, and then going on the outside and transitions as well, counter-attacks. Whereas Amorim's system, obviously, you've got the number 10s inside, you've got more patient build-up is what he wants, kind of recycling the ball. I was at the open training last night where he had sort of a team of outfield players up against mannequins and then scoring a goal, and he's trying to practice passing us, and each one was every player having a touch of the ball and being recycled across through the middle as well. So that's the kind of that he wants, rather than up and down, which maybe you could say is actually in the traditions of United, that kind of sort of fast attacking play. So I think always there was that tension between the two of them, and it's come to a point where Aaron's made a call that he wants to, cash in, I suppose, on Garnacho, reinvest it in players that are more suited to his style, more suited to what he wants. It was interesting, though, because he started, I thought maybe even 18 games in a row, Garnacho, the second half of this season, and it looked like there'd been some more understanding. Amorim was being quite kind about him in press conferences in terms of the defensive learnings that he was doing. But clearly, in hindsight, maybe that was a default setting, and it's because Ahmad was injured, Xerxes was injured. So it'd be really fascinating to see where he goes from here, Garnacho, who comes in to buy him. Obviously, Chelsea have been interested in him. Napoli had a bid rejected in January. United should be looking to get more than that this summer.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one because, again, alongside the Rashford exit, it's one that 12 months ago you would never have predicted. You never would have thought that Rashford and Garnacho would be leaving Manchester United, and hopefully it's all for the best. I think we have to accept that the culture needs changing at United. We can't carry on where the players have this power, and especially young players who really should be kind of building their way up as people and as figures at Man United, coming out publicly accusing the manager of mistreating him. And it's not the first time as well, is it? I think people seem to forget that Garnacho was dropped the same time Rashford was dropped. The only difference is he clearly sort of apologised or made amends and was brought back in. But like you said, it's not the first incident that they've had together. Let's talk about some ins a little bit more then. Loads to talk about. We've got Cunha, we've got Delap, Bryan Mbeumo seems to be on the radar a little bit as well, and some other positions potentially. Let's start with Cunha, because this one, for all intents and purposes, that's done. Let us know what do you know about the potential medical and this sort of payment structure that United have agreed to.
Yeah, so it's been sort of long trail, this, hasn't it? And United release clause just means that the negotiations are straightforward. In the end, and negotiating, they tried to get the instalments spread out for more years because basically they pay in instalments. So the first one now, the second one in 2026, the third one in 2027. So 2 years' time. So it's an even three-way split of 2.5 million. So, you can see how that then appeals to United. That is a contract that was agreed by Cunha's agents in January when he signed that new deal. So all the negotiation was done by them, really. And then if clubs to come to the table and either pay it or not, obviously United tried to spread the payments out a bit longer, go on the old Klarna extension maybe. But Wolves said no, and, that's the way it is. So, medical is due for it. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to take place. Contract, personal terms all agreed. So, basically, Matheus Cunha is in Man United.
Fantastic. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about United's wages over the last sort of 18 months or so. I think Ratcliffe seems to have a big emphasis on clearing out some of those big earners. Do we know anywhere the ballpark of his wages? Is he going to be in that top bracket with Bruno's and Casemiro's, or do you expect him slightly lower down than that?
No, I think, Bruno and Casemiro are on sort of big money. Obviously, without the Champions League, it comes down by 25%. So, they're sort of, 300,000 in that kind of region a week. I don't think Cunha will be that much. But he wasn't a good contract at Wolves, that one that he signed in January, £100,000 a week, I think. So he'll be getting a pay bump on that. It's within United's, means. Obviously, Christian Eriksen going out, I think he was on sort of decent money. Victor Lindelof as well. I'm not sure exactly his salary, but you're able to kind of let a couple of good earners go, and then Cunha kind of is sort of equitable to that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? You'd expect him somewhere around there. He's just cost 60 million quid. It's this thing that we had this sort of track record of new player comes in. I think there was a spell, wasn't there, where we got brought in sort of Sancho, Varane, Ronaldo, Casemiro, all within a couple of years, who were all on 250 plus, weren't they? Ronaldo seemingly up to 500 or whatever. I feel like we are reining that back in just generally at this point. Another player that presumably wouldn't command too high a transfer, a wage. We know the fee is around £30 million. Liam Delap. Talks supposedly have taken place. Is that correct? Do you know United's standing on this? Because it seems as though Chelsea want him as well, other clubs want him, and we're kind of waiting for him. Do you know how well those talks went? Do you know anything on that?
I don't know exactly how well the talks went, but no, we reported on the Athletic Monday. It was before we went out to Bilbao that they were having face-to-face talks. I think Delap had informed Ipswich that this is what was going to happen, or his agents did. And so, he's been speaking to clubs. David Moyes obviously mentioned that Everton has spoken to him. I believe Chelsea and Newcastle as well. If it's between United and Chelsea, But then again, I don't know. I think regular football is a big thing for him. I think that United are obviously, making a big pitch. Jason Wilcox was, had him at Man City, signed him for Man City when he was overseeing the academy there. And so, yeah, it's up to him. I think he wants to make a decision before he goes away to the Euros under 21s, which I think starts on 12th of June. But obviously, England will go away before then. So, I think it's a decision that is coming anyway in the next few days.
Great. I mean, I hope we can, can just sort of get these deals done early. The other one as well that seems to have come up, it's been sort of in the background a little bit, trundling away. Bryan Mbeumo, obviously, of Brentford, reports this week that there were some talks with him and that he is now on United's radar. Is that what you've heard? Is that your understanding? And what is United's interest in Bryan Mbeumo?
Yeah, to be honest, the only conversation I've had on this was a few weeks ago, and I think I think Matt McGrath wrote it in the Telegraph originally, and that he was being looked at basically, and the person I was speaking to gave the indication that that was somebody that United might be interested in. As I thought, to be honest, as an alternative to Cunha, albeit he is left-footed, so I mean you could almost see Cunha and Mbeumo being those two number 10s perhaps on different sides, because He's not. I mean, I think he has played for Brentford, but he's not really a striker as such, particularly not in the mode that I think Ruben Amorim would want. So, but yeah, clearly he's an option, and Brentford, it feels like acquiescent that he's going to move on this summer. They obviously want a lot of money for him, $1 million. I think I saw floated, but it feels like one to keep an eye on for sure.
I mean, I think he'd be a great sign, and like you said, maybe potentially Cunha on one side, him on the other. I think that massively improves United, and if you could get Delap as well, it's a massively changed front three already with 60 goals or thereabouts this season. I think that'd be absolutely brilliant. I mean, let's have a look at some outs as well, because I think almost this is maybe more important now, especially post Europa League final, where there isn't that guarantee of the Champions League money, there isn't that extra money for winning the trophy itself. I think sales might be just as important as the ins, if not more so. So we've already seen Lindelof, Evans and Eriksen all confirmed to have left Manchester United, which again I don't think any of them were ever going to command much of a fee, but that is wages freed off the list. We spoke about Garnacho, he seems like one who will leave. What's the latest with Jadon Sancho? Because I feel as though he's on the cusp of one of the more embarrassing transfers I've ever seen, where a team is literally about to pay £5 million to not have to have him. What's your understanding of that situation?
I mean, it feels that way, doesn't it? Because if they were going to sign him, just say you're going to sign him. Yeah. But I saw Coach Enzo Maresca today, obviously on the eve of their league final, where he said, we'll find out, we'll make that call in the next 48 hours. So it seems like they've kept it as an open scenario right up until the last moment, and then it feels like they're going to send him back and pay £5 million, which will then give United a headache to sell him somewhere else. Would they be able to get, I mean, it wasn't a huge transfer fee, 25 million. Could they get, 20 million somewhere else? It calculates the same. But yeah, I mean, listen, maybe Chelsea do end up triggering it, and that's a solution for United, but it feels an all episode that they could do then does come back to the club.
Yeah, I mean, Rashford's the other one who has been this, like I said, ongoing saga since himself and Garnacho were dropped, and whenever it was now, months and months ago before he's moved to Villa. He's left Villa, hasn't he? He isn't going to be going there. We hear this £40 million fee. Does there seem to be interest in Marcus Rashford? Do you think that deal will get done, or is it possible that we see him wasting away in the reserves for a year?
Well, I mean, the Villa thing, it feels like it's over because they get Champions League. He posted in, I think, saying thanks so much for a brilliant time, which felt like a farewell. Which is fair. I mean, I think he always joined with the idea that he wanted somewhere else anyway. Like this was a bit of a platform for him to refresh and show his talents and then earn another move. Barcelona's the big one, right? That he would absolutely love. Hansi Flick has spoken about him also in complimentary terms. So you're sort of thinking, maybe something could happen there because, they've signed Rafinha, for example, who obviously was very good for Leeds, but he seems to have gone on to a new level. So if Flick could do that with that kind of Premier League player, then, potentially with an energised Rashford, You've got a huge asset there for a knockdown price if it's 40 million. But yeah, let's see. I could see this one going a long time over the summer. Maybe even ultimately another loan gets agreed at the end of the summer. Because again, it feels like what Amorim previously about Rashford still remains the case. I'm sure they'll have more summer, but I don't think we're back from a strong viewpoint, particularly when Amorim at the end of the Villa game was saying, let's not think about the past, let's go forward. It's the good times are coming. And I think to make sure that is followed through, you do need a clean break from those players that you've had issues with in the past.
Well, I think that's a good transition because I wanted to ask you about a couple of other players. Luke Shaw and Andre Onana, also alongside Garnacho, left out of the squad entirely against Aston Villa for that final game. There seems to be sort of growing hints and nudges and winks about this goalkeeper situation. I know that obviously Onana's not been particularly great in the 2 years that he's been here, but it maybe felt like he's the last of our worries. It seems as though maybe he's going up that list as time goes on. Is it what happened with Luke Shaw and Onana? Do you know? And are those positions ones that United are looking to change and chop in the summer?
The goalkeeper position hasn't been on the agenda as far as I'm aware. I know there's been a lot of this, but the priority has been getting goals in the team, and maybe then working with Onana down the back three better. He's built these relationships. The defence keeps changing, so for him to understand who's in front of him, little mechanisms really working. That requires some time. But clearly, his performance in the second half of the season weren't good enough. Even in the Europa League final, I don't know, could he have done better with the goal? I don't know. Maybe it's harsh, but but then obviously being left out of the Villa for Bayern Day, I don't know. It's a funny one. I think genuinely a bit of pace and kind of progression in Bayern Day, that chance to play was something they want to do. He's over here, Onana, obviously. So is Luke Shaw. I was watching train last night. Luke Shaw was on the exercise bike for the most part that we saw with Mason Mount, whereas Onana was full part of training. So as far as I'm aware, he's not been told that he's leaving. The links with Saudi Arabia are genuine. They were there sort of last summer as well. Although nothing, I don't think he's there. Never say never. Because obviously we thought David came in, but it doesn't feel to right now for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, it's the list. It's the priorities. The word in it. It's how far down can we get on these main priorities? We need goals. If we can sort that, maybe we'll worry about the goalkeeper afterwards. Another big one, and I think a final one before we let you go, is Bruno Fernandes, United's captain, best player this season again, most creative player in the Premier League again, tops all of the metrics at Manchester United. I think he even came second in the Premier League for ball recoveries as well. And when you think of him as this sort of luxury creator, he's obviously so much more than that. There seems to be clear and genuine interest from Saudi Arabia, and there was these reports that he's sort of weighing it up. They haven't had a response yet. What's going on there? Do you think there's an actual chance that Bruno Fernandes leaves Manchester United this summer?
Yeah, I mean, that feels... It felt plausible after the Europa League final defeat. If United won that in the Champions League, I think it gets put to bed immediately. It might even be put to bed pretty, based on the idea that he's set a deadline as such. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, this Saudi Arabia off genuine. Al Hilal, by information, I know people have got different numbers. All I can say is it's what I've been told by someone that I think has a good idea. 25 million euro net. So that would sort of triple his money. With Al Hilal, saying that they think to offer something like 80 million in a transfer fee, which is obviously an appealing prospect. I just don't get the impression that it's something United are entertaining. Bruno Fernandes is particularly entertaining, although again he kept it a bit open, didn't he? After the Europa League final, he said similar at the end of last season though, and ended up signing a new contract. So, he's over here signing autographs for fans. He looks engaged to me. Let's see how it goes. But I don't know. My gut right now would be that he stays. But let's see.
I said the last one was the last one. This is the last one. With there being these reports about United not needing such a big squad. Obviously, we've got at minimum 8 fewer games because of no Europe. Potentially, obviously, a lot more than that. We played loads in the Europa League in the end, didn't we? Getting to the final. Do you see this is going to be the summer to really hit that clear out button? Because next season, if you end up top 6 again, you need a bigger squad. You need, you get more money, so you want to be buying sort of bigger names, etc. Do you think that they see it as like, we've hit rock bottom and we can make the squad smaller? We know what needs doing. We can be surgical with this. Do you see this as a season where United will really, sort of swing the axe a little bit and clear out that dressing room?
As much as they can do, right? It's always easier said than done when you've got players on big contracts. Negotiating those exits is hard because, the players' point of view, they want paid up in full, and then just negotiation around that. Finding clubs for these players that can pay enough money to take them is another thing. They obviously want to, reshape the squad, change it, and I also think the fact there's no Champions League means that a smaller squad is appealing to Amorim. Pep Guardiola obviously has had that with Man City previously. And so that then creates that competitive tension, doesn't it, in a squad? You don't want to have a bloated number of players where, they're on the sidelines with no hope of playing. And like I say, they could end up playing, 38 league games, depending on how far they go in the FA Cup and Carabao Cup. It might only be 40 odd, whereas, recent seasons they've been playing 60 odd. So there's a lot of games to miss out on. So, I do feel like they'll try and trim the squad for sure, get some money in. Obviously, bring in players that what they think is the right quality, is in the right kind of character. But as I say, easier said than done.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Cheers, Laurie. Thank you for coming on, as always. Thank you for making time for us while you're out there on the postseason.
Always, Joe.
Pre-season tour. Go on.
Yeah, postseason, pre-season 20 weeks. I'll see you out there. I just want to say that there was actually, I've always got to make time for you, Joe, because actually at the press conference yesterday, a lovely guy called Amar came up to me. Sorry, I couldn't get my words out there. And said he'd seen me on Stretford Paddock with you, and he wanted to say hello, and they made a good chat. So Stretford Paddock is, globally known, pal.
I love that. Like, all the other stuff you do, this is a fraction of 1% of your time is on here, and someone came and recognised you from this. So that's absolutely brilliant.
You've got the reach, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Cheers, mate. Thank you for coming on as always. Enjoy your time out there. We'll see you when you get back. And of course, like you said, we'll see you out in America as well. Thank you very much for joining us. This has been Inside United with Laurie Whitwell, flying in visually all the way from Kuala Lumpur. We'll see you in a bit.